The Great Hall was the heart of the Galactic Federation. It was a massive room, big enough to hold a small city. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, shining on the delegates from 1,000 different worlds. Some of the aliens were tall and thin, with skin like shimmering water. Others were short and sturdy, with many arms and hard, rocky shells. They buzzed, they clicked, they spoke in low rumbles. It was a symphony of strange life. In the very center of the hall was the most important place, the Circle of Founders. Here is where the oldest and most powerful species sat. Their chairs were like thrones made of precious materials from their home planets. One chair was made of glowing crystal. Another looked like it was woven from living wood. They were all grand and unique, except for one. On the end of the circle was a single chair made of plain, polished black stone. It was simple. It had no carvings, no glow, no life. It looked cold and empty, and it was always empty. It was the chair for the Sol system. For Earth. No one had ever sat in it. Today was a special day. A new species was joining the Federation. They were called the Cathar. They looked like very elegant birds. Their bodies were covered in smooth golden feathers. They had long necks and bright, intelligent eyes. Their new delegate, named Chervik, stood proudly. His feathers puffed up with happiness and a little bit of nerves. The ceremony was long. Leaders gave speeches. Music played from strange instruments. Finally, it was over. Chervik let out a soft breath he did not know he was holding. He turned to the delegate sitting next to him. This was an old reptilian species called the Gax. Their skin was a pattern of green and brown scales, and their eyes were slow and calm. "Honored Gax," Chervik began, his voice a gentle chirp. "I have a question, if I may." The Gax delegate, named Kalarn, turned his heavy head. "You may ask, young Cathar." Chervik gestured with a wingtip towards the empty black chair. "That chair, the Sol system. Is it a memorial? Did the species that lived there die out before they could travel between the stars?" Kalarn was silent for a moment. He shifted in his seat, his scales making a soft scraping sound. "That is a question for another time," he said, his voice low. "It is a formality. Nothing more. The system is under quarantine. It is a dead world. Do not trouble your thoughts with it." His tone was kind but firm. It was the end of the discussion, but Chervik saw something in the old Gax's eyes. A flicker. It was not anger. It was something else. It looked like unease. Not far away, a young man named Min heard the whole conversation. Min was a human. He worked for the Federation as a liaison, helping with communication between different species. He was one of a few hundred humans who lived among the stars, but they were not from Earth. Decades ago, a large ship was found drifting in space. It was a generation ship, a vessel meant to travel for centuries. Its systems were failing. Inside, the adults were gone, and only the youngest children remained alive, cared for by machines. The Federation rescued them. These children grew up in the Federation. They learned its ways. They were peaceful, quiet, and hardworking. They were completely integrated, but they knew nothing about their real home. Min felt a strange feeling every time he looked at the empty black chair. There was a hollow feeling in his chest, a sadness he could not explain. All the foundling humans felt it, but they never talked about it. It was just a quiet ache they all shared. Later that day, Min met his friend Gina. Gina was also a human foundling. She was very smart and worked as an astrophysicist, studying stars and signals from deep space. They were in a common area, watching the lights of ships come and go from the station's great windows. "Another new species joined today," Min said. "I saw," Gina replied. "The Cathar. They seem graceful." Min was quiet for a moment. Their delegate asked about the empty chair. "The Sol chair," Gina looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. "What did Kalarn say?" "The usual. That it's a formality, a dead world. A quarantine," Min sighed. "But why does it feel like more than that? Why does it feel like a secret everyone knows but won't talk about?" Gina nodded slowly. "I know the feeling. It's like a word on the tip of your tongue, but you can never remember it." She looked out the window at the stars. "I was calibrating the deep space array yesterday. The one that listens to the oldest signals in the galaxy." "And?" Mayan asked. "And I found something," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "A signal. It's incredibly faint. It's buried under so much background noise, but it's repeating. It's coming from the quarantine zone, from the Sol system." Min's eyes widened. Are you sure? I'm sure, Gina said. My director Zistik told me to ignore it. He said it's forbidden. Too dangerous. Risk of contamination. What are you going to do? Min asked. Gina looked at him, her eyes serious. I can't ignore it, Min. This is the first real clue about where we came from, about why that chair is empty. I have to know. Min felt a knot of fear and excitement in his stomach. He knew she was right. He also knew it could get them into serious trouble. The Federation's rules about the quarantine zone were absolute. No one was allowed to go there. No one was allowed to listen. What do you need? He asked quietly. Gina managed a small smile. I need a friend, and I need access to a secure, isolated server, somewhere we won't be watched. That night, when the station was quiet, they met in a small, unused data analysis room. It was a forgotten closet, really, filled with old equipment. Gina had brought a portable data drive. Her hands were shaking as she plugged it in. I managed to make a copy of the signal, she explained. It's not a complex message. It's just a raw data stream. It's carrying one single file, a visual file. It just repeats over and over. The screen in front of them flickered to life. It was filled with static at first. Then an image began to form. It was not what they expected. The Federation thought of Earth as a primitive place, a world that never advanced past its own atmosphere, a dead world, but the image on the screen showed a city. It was a city of the future. Towers of gleaming silver and glass reached for the sky. Flying vehicles moved in neat lanes between the buildings. The sky was a clean, bright blue. It was beautiful. It was advanced. It was alive. This is not a dead world, Min whispered, his voice full of wonder. The image changed. It showed a view from space. Earth was a brilliant blue and white marble. Around it, they could see space stations and shipyards. Hundreds of ships moved around the planet like a swarm of busy bees. Humanity was not primitive. They had been thriving. They were powerful. Then the image changed again. A shadow fell over the planet. A new kind of ship appeared in the sky. It was not a human design. It was angular and menacing, colored a dark, brutal metal. Min and Gina recognized the design. It was in the Federation's own historical archives. It was the ship of the progenitors. The progenitors were the first species to achieve space travel. They were the ones who built the Federation. The official history said they were wise and peaceful. It said they had ascended to a higher plane of existence long ago, leaving their younger cousins to rule. But the video on the screen told a different story. The progenitor ships did not come in peace. They opened fire. Beams of terrible energy lanced down from the sky, striking the beautiful cities. The gleaming towers exploded into dust and fire. The scene was one of utter destruction. The view shifted. It showed the surface of the planet again. Human soldiers in advanced armor were fighting, but they were not fighting the progenitors directly. They were fighting other aliens, aliens that Min and Gina knew very well. They saw the sturdy, multi-armed forms of the Gax. They saw the graceful, bird-like forms of the early Cathar. They saw many of the Federation's founding species, but these aliens were not fighting as allies. Their eyes were blank. They moved like machines. They were being used as soldiers, as a shield for the progenitors behind them. They weren't founders, Gina said, her voice trembling with horror. They were slaves. The progenitors used them as cannon fodder. The truth was like a physical blow. The history they had been taught was a lie. The Federation was not built on peace and wisdom. It was built on conquest, and their home, Earth, had been the target. The video continued to play, showing the horror of a war that humanity was clearly losing. The screen was filled with fire and death. Min and Gina could only watch, their hearts pounding, their forgotten home now feeling more real and more terrible than they could have ever imagined. This was not a simple mystery. This was a nightmare, and they had only just begun to uncover it. The room was cold and silent, save for the low hum of the old computer. Min and Gina sat frozen, their eyes glued to the screen. The images of fire and ruin played out, a silent movie of their world's destruction. The beautiful cities were gone. The sky was now thick with black smoke. The alien ships, the ships of the progenitors, hung in the sky like dark promises of death. This can't be real, Min whispered. His voice was rough. The progenitors were peaceful. They built the Federation. They ascended. Gina pointed a shaking finger at the screen. On it, a group of Gax soldiers marched in perfect, mindless lines. their weapons firing at human positions. Their eyes were empty. Do they look ascended to you, Min? They look controlled. They look like puppets. The video was not a story. It had no narration. It was just a raw record. It showed the war in brutal pieces. It showed human ships, sleek and fast, being torn apart by the larger, more powerful progenitor vessels. It showed the ground covered with the bodies of humans and the controlled aliens alike. It was a losing battle. Earth was being overwhelmed. Why show us this? Gina asked, her face pale. Why send this out into space? It's just a record of how we lost. Maybe it's a warning, Min said quietly. A warning for anyone who finds it. The video changed again. The scene of battle faded. Now it showed a different place. It was a laboratory deep underground. The walls were plain metal. Men and women in white coats moved with a frantic energy. Their faces were tight with stress and exhaustion, but their eyes burned with a fierce determination. In the center of the lab was a large machine. It did not look like a weapon. It had no barrels or missiles. It was a complex sphere of crystalline wires pulsing with a soft blue light. A scientist, a woman with graying hair and deep lines on her face, was speaking to the camera. Her voice came through clear and steady but filled with a terrible sadness. This is Dr. Yunji, the woman said. The planetary defense grid has fallen. Our fleet is gone. We estimate we have 72 hours before global surrender is demanded. She gestured to the machine behind her. The enemy does not fight with soldiers of its own. It takes the minds of others. It turns our galactic neighbors into its weapons. We cannot fight them by destroying their bodies. To do so would be to slaughter the innocent. She took a deep breath. Her next words were heavy with meaning. So we will not fight their bodies. We will fight their mind. The progenitor species is a hive mind, a single consciousness in billions of bodies. That is its strength. And now it will be its end. Min and Gina leaned closer. The horror on the screen was changing. It was becoming something else. Something colder. This device, Dr. Yunji continued, does not kill. It transmits a single resonant frequency. A frequency of silence. It will not harm any species with an individual mind. But for a hive consciousness, it will be like turning off a light. It will sever the connection. It will leave each physical body alive but utterly alone, trapped in a silence they have never known. A young man, a lab assistant named Day, rushed into the frame. Doctor, the calibrations are complete. The orbital amplifiers are in position. But the power requirement... He could not finish his sentence. Dr. Yunji looked directly into the camera. Her gaze seemed to reach across the centuries and into the small, dark room where Min and Gina sat. The power requirement is the total energy output of our planetary core tap. It is a one-time pulse. It will save the galaxy from a tyrant, but it will also render Earth lifeless. Our atmosphere will be stripped. Our magnetic field will collapse. Our world will become a frozen rock. This is the price. A single tear traced a path down her dirty cheek. We choose to pay it. We choose to be the wall against which this evil breaks. Let the galaxy know that humanity looked into the abyss, and instead of becoming a monster, we chose to become a monument. Let our empty chair be a reminder. The screen went white for a second. Then a new image appeared. It was a view from space. The blue pulse of energy expanded from Earth in a perfect silent circle. It moved faster than light, washing over the progenitor fleet. And then, the most terrifying thing happened. Nothing. The progenitor ships did not explode. They simply stopped. Their lights went out. They drifted powerless and silent. The weapon had worked. It had not destroyed their ships. It had destroyed the single mind that controlled them. It had left billions of progenitor bodies alive but empty. Their consciousness was gone. The view shifted to the surface. The controlled Gax and Cathar soldiers stopped fighting. They blinked, looking around in confusion and terror. They were free. But the human soldiers who stood near them did not cheer. They looked up at the sky, knowing what had been done. The final image was of Earth itself. The beautiful blue and white marble began to change. The blue faded to a sickly brown. The white clouds thinned and vanished. The planet grew dark. The light went out. A final line of text scrolled across the screen in the same simple digital font. The quarantine is not for your protection. It is for ours. We will watch. The chair remains vacant until you are worthy of the neighbors you tried to erase. Then the screen went black. The signal was over. The only sound was the frantic beating of Min and Gina's hearts. They sat in the dark for a long time. The weight of what they had seen crushed them. It was too big to understand all at once. They didn't die out, Gina finally said, her voice a dry croak. They didn't lose the war. They won, Min finished the word, feeling strange in his mouth. They won by sacrificing everything. Not just their lives. Their entire world. And the Federation, Gina continued, the horror dawning on her face. The Federation is built on a lie. The progenitors weren't wise teachers. They were conquerors. And our ancestors saved them. She pointed at the black screen. They saved the Gax, they saved the Cathar. They freed them. And in return, they were erased from history, treated as a dead, primitive species. Min put his head in his hands. What do we do with this, Gina? This is bigger than us. This changes everything. We have to tell someone, Gina said, but she sounded unsure. Who? Min asked, looking up. Who can we trust? This information shatters the foundation of the entire Galactic Federation. If the Gax and the others find out they were once slaves, if they find out their saviors were the humans they pity, what will happen? We have to tell Kalarn, Gina decided. The Gax delegate. He's old. He's kind. He seemed uneasy about the chair. Maybe he suspects something is wrong with the official story. It was a huge risk. Kalarn was a high-ranking official. He could have them arrested for breaking the quarantine. He could have the data destroyed to protect the Federation's peaceful image. But they had no other choice. The truth was afire in their chests. It could not be contained. They copied the data onto a small, secure crystal. They left the old data closet feeling like different people. The station around them looked the same, but it felt alien now. The gentle hum of its system sounded like a lie. The polite greetings from other species felt hollow. They were walking through a world built on a secret, and they were the only ones who knew. They sent a quiet, urgent message to Kalarn, requesting a private meeting on a matter of galactic history. They did not say more. The reply came quickly. Kalarn agreed. He told them to come to his private chambers in the diplomatic sector late that night. The walk to his chambers felt like the longest walk of their lives. Every sound made them jump. They felt like everyone was watching them. They carried the crystal in Gina's pocket. It felt as heavy as a star. Finally, they stood before the ornate door to Kalarn's rooms. Min took a deep breath and pressed the chime. The door slid open silently. The room inside was dim, lit by a soft orange light. Kalarn was there. He was not sitting in his official chair. He was standing by a large window looking out at the stars. He looked old and tired. He turned to face them. His slow reptilian eyes moved from Min to Gina. You have found something, he said. It was not a question. His voice was low and grave. You have been looking at the past. A dangerous past. Min and Gina stepped into the room. The door closed behind them, sealing them in with the truth and the old Gax delegate. Gina took the crystal from her pocket. She held it out in her open palm. We found a signal from Earth, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. It's not what we were taught. It's not what anyone was taught. Kalarn looked at the crystal. He did not move to take it. A long moment of silence stretched out in the dim room. I was afraid of this day, he said softly. I was afraid someone would finally look. The air in Kalarn's chamber was thick and still. The old Gax did not move. He just looked at the data crystal in Gina's hand as if it were a poisonous insect. You should not have done this, he said, his voice a low rumble. Some doors are closed for a reason. The reason is a lie, Min said, finding his courage. The progenitors were not peaceful. They were slavers. They controlled the minds of your people. They made the Gax fight their war. Kalarn's head drooped. The scales on his neck seemed to loosen. He looked incredibly tired. I know, he whispered. The word hung in the air. Min and Gina stared at him, stunned. You know? Gina asked, her hand trembling. Kalarn gestured to a simple data reader on his desk. Show me. With shaky fingers, Gina inserted the crystal. The screen lit up, showing the final moments of the transmission. Dr. Yunji's speech, the pulse of energy, the dying of Earth's light. Kalarn watched it all. He did not react. He did not show surprise or anger. He only watched, his ancient eyes absorbing the images he had clearly seen before. When it was over, he turned back to the window. The official history is a story we tell our children, he said. A simple story of wise founders and a peaceful galaxy. The truth is too complicated, too frightening. But it's the truth, Min insisted. Humanity saved you. They freed the Gax, they freed everyone. And then they gave up their world to make sure the progenitors could never return. And we became a story about a dead, primitive species. We sit in the Federation as orphans, and no one knows we belong to the people who saved them all. Kalarn turned to face them. For the first time, they saw a deep old shame in his eyes. What would you have me do, young humans? Shout this truth from the top of the conclave hall? Tell every species that their proud history is a lie? That they were once puppets? That their freedom was bought with the blood of an entire world they now ignore? He shook his heavy head. It would shatter the Federation. It would cause chaos. War, perhaps. So we do nothing. Gina's voice was sharp with disbelief. We let the lie continue? We let that chair stay empty as a monument to a mistake? The chair is not a mistake. Kalarn's voice rose, filled with a sudden fierce emotion. It is the most important object in this galaxy. It is a silent judge. It is a reminder of a debt that can never be paid. Every day I look at it, I remember. A few of us in the oldest species. We know, we pass the secret down. We remember the silence that fell when the progenitor voice vanished from our minds. We remember the freedom that followed. And we remember the cost. He walked closer to them, his slow steps heavy on the floor. You think we pity you? We do not pity you. We are in awe of you, and we are terrified of you. Terrified? Min asked, confused. Why? Because of what your species did, Kalarn said. Any other species faced with annihilation would have fought to the last breath. They would have tried to destroy the progenitor fleet. They would have killed the controlled armies. They would have become killers to survive. But your ancestors, they found another way. They used a weapon that had never been used before. A weapon of perfect, terrible mercy. They did not become the monster they fought. They chose to become a sacrifice instead. He pointed a clawed finger at the black screen. That is not the action of a primitive species. That is the action of a species so advanced, so ethically powerful, that we cannot even understand it. The empty chair is not empty because Earth is dead. It is empty because no one in this galaxy is worthy to sit in it. Not even you. Their children. His words settled over Min and Gina. The truth was even bigger and more horrifying than they had thought. The quarantine was not just for safety. It was a statement. Humanity had judged itself and found the rest of the galaxy lacking. What happens now? Gina asked quietly. Kalarn sighed, the fight going out of him. Now you have forced my hand. The secret is out. 2 humans know. The truth cannot be put back in its box. We must tell the Circle of Founders, the leaders of the oldest species. They must hear this from me before they hear rumors in the halls. The meeting of the Circle of Founders was called in absolute secrecy. It happened in a secure room deep within the station, far from the Grand Hall. There were no aides, no guards, only the leaders themselves. Min and Gina stood with Kalarn. In the room were the heads of the Gax, the Cathar, the Vril, and 2 other ancient species. Chervik, the new Cathar delegate, was there. He looked small and confused. Kalarn did not let them speak. He simply nodded to Gina. She played the recording. The room was silent as the images filled the screen. The advanced human cities, the brutal progenitor attack, the controlled armies of Gax and early Cathar, their eyes blank. The underground laboratory, Dr. Yunji's calm, sad explanation of the weapon. The pulse of light, the dying of Earth, the leaders watched. The insectoid Vril director, Ziztik, stopped his constant, gentle buzzing. His antennae drooped. The leader of the Cathar let out a low, pained cry as she saw her ancestors used as mindless soldiers. Chervik looked ill. When it ended, the silence was deeper than any space. It was the silence of a universe being remade. The Cathar leader was the first to speak. Her voice was a broken whisper. All this time, we believed we earned our place through strength. We were told the progenitors guided us to greatness. We were livestock weapons. The Vril director, Ziztik, turned his multifaceted eyes toward Min and Gina. And the humans, they did not destroy us. They freed us. They gave us our minds back, and their reward was to be erased from history. The chair, the Gax leader, an even older figure than Kalarn, rasped. We always knew it was a penance, but we did not know the full depth of our shame. The horror that filled the room was not a loud, panicked horror. It was a quiet, crushing horror. It was the horror of a foundation cracking. The story they had built their lives on, their civilization on, was false. Their saviors were the quiet, polite foundlings they had barely noticed. Their freedom was a gift paid for with a world. This changes everything, the Cathar leader said. And nothing, Kalarn replied sadly. We cannot tell the public. The shock would be too great. The galaxy's peace is fragile, so we continue the lie, Chirvik asked, his young voice filled with anger. We continue to let the humans walk among us as orphans. We continue to treat their home as a dead, forbidden place? What would you have us do? The old Gax leader asked. Build a statue? It would not be enough. Nothing we could ever do would be enough. Min looked at the faces of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He saw not pride and authority, but shame and confusion. They were like children who had just learned a terrible secret about their parents. He took a small step forward. All eyes turned to him. You don't have to build a statue, Min said, his voice soft but clear. And you don't have to tell everyone. But you have to stop treating us like we don't belong. The humans you found on that ship, we are the children of the people who did that. He pointed at the screen. We carry that inside us. Maybe you can't tell the galaxy the truth, but you can stop lying to us. You can let us remember who we are. Gina stood beside him. The message said they are watching. They are waiting for you to be worthy. Maybe that doesn't mean you have to become like them. Maybe it just means you have to stop hiding from what you are, and what we are. The leaders looked at the two young humans. They were no longer just liaisons or astrophysicists. They were living reminders of the galaxy's greatest debt, and in their calm, determined faces, the leaders saw a faint reflection of the species that had chosen sacrifice over victory. The truth was out. It was a dangerous, world-breaking truth. But in the quiet, secure room, something new began. It was not a solution. It was just a beginning. The first small step toward worthiness. The secret was a heavy stone in the pockets of everyone in the room. The leaders of the Circle of Founders did not speak for a long time. They looked at Min and Gina, and for the first time they did not see two quiet, assimilated humans. They saw the descendants of giants. They saw the living children of a ghost. The old Gax leader finally broke the silence. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. The boy is right, he said, looking at Min. We cannot tell the galaxy. The chaos would be immense. But we cannot continue as we were. The lie is a poison. Director Zitik of the Vril buzzed softly, a sound of agreement. The human foundlings. They have lived as strangers in a home that is rightfully theirs. We took them in, but we never honored them. We never even told them their own story. Kalarn nodded slowly. The first step is not a public one. It is a private one. We must speak to the other human foundlings. They deserve to know their heritage. They deserve to know the weight and the glory of their name. The task fell to Min and Gina. With the quiet support of the circle, they gathered the human community. It was not a large group. A few hundred people living and working across the vast station. They called a meeting in a large neutral hall. The humans came, curious and a little worried. They were engineers, artists, scientists, and teachers. They were peaceful people, comfortable in their lives. Min stood before them. He felt nervous. How do you tell people that everything they know about themselves is wrong? My friends, he began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. We have always felt it. The hollow feeling when we look at the empty chair, the quiet ache for a home we never knew. We were told we were the last survivors of a failed ship. We were told Earth was a dead world, lost to time. He took a deep breath. That is a lie. He and Gina told them the story. They told them of the beautiful advanced Earth. They told them of the progenitors, the conquerors, not the wise teachers. They told them of the mind-controlled armies of the Gax and the Cathar. They showed them the recording of Dr. Yunji. They showed them the weapon of silence. They showed them the sacrifice. The room was utterly silent. No one moved. No one breathed. They watched the death of their world, the ultimate act of their ancestors with wide, disbelieving eyes. When the screen went dark, the silence continued. Then a low murmur started. It was not a sound of anger or panic. It was a sound of deep, profound understanding. It was the sound of a puzzle piece, long lost, finally clicking into place. The hollow feeling in their chest suddenly had a name. It was grief. It was pride. It was a legacy of unimaginable strength. An older woman, a botanist named Hana, stood up. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was strong. All my life, she said, I felt I had to be extra quiet, extra polite, to prove that humans were peaceful, that we belonged. She looked around the room at her people. But we were never the ones who needed to prove our worth. We were the standard all along. A new feeling began to grow in the room. It was not a desire for revenge or for power. It was a quiet, solid dignity. They stood a little taller. They looked at each other with new eyes. They were not orphans. They were heirs. Meanwhile, the Circle of Founders began its own quiet work. They could not reveal the truth, but they could change its shadow. They drafted a new secret addendum to the Galactic Charter. It was called the Sol Declaration. It was not a law for the public. It was a promise to themselves. The declaration stated that the Sol system was not a quarantined dead zone, but a protected memorial. A galactic tomb for a species that had died so that others might live free. It granted the human foundlings permanent status as wardens of the memory, giving them a formal, if hidden, place in the Federation's structure. They also did something else. They sent a message. It was a fragile, tightly beamed signal directed at the Sol system. It contained no grand speeches. It was a simple, humble collection of data. It showed the peaceful, thriving galaxy. It showed the Gax building their great cities. It showed the Cathar singing their complex songs. It showed the Vril cultivating their great hive gardens. It was a report, a message to the silent watchers. It said without words, "Look, we are trying. We remember weeks turned into months. Life on the station seemed the same on the surface. But underneath, everything was different. The human foundlings carried themselves differently. They were not louder or prouder. They were calmer, more certain. When they walked past the empty black chair, they did not feel a hollow ache. They felt a quiet connection. The alien delegates noticed the change. They did not understand it, but they felt it. The humans who had always been helpful were now consulted more often. Their opinions carried a new weight. It was as if an unspoken truth was slowly seeping into the foundation of the station. One day, Min and Gina were called to Kalarn's chamber. The old Gax looked tired, but there was a new peace in his eyes. "A response has come," he said simply. Min and Gina froze. "A response? From Earth?" Kalarn gestured to his screen. There was no complex video this time, no long message. There was only a single line of text in the same simple digital font as the original signal. "Is the chair comfortable?" Min and Gina read the words over and over. The meaning was not immediately clear. "What does it mean?" Gina asked. Kalarn let out a soft, rattling sigh. "It means they are still there. It means they are still watching. And it means they are asking us the most important question of all." He looked at them, his reptilian eyes deep and knowing. "They are not asking if the physical chair is comfortable. They are asking if we are comfortable with what it represents. Are we comfortable living in a galaxy built on their sacrifice? Are we comfortable with the truth? Are we worthy of the peace they bought for us?" The message was not a greeting. It was a test. The Circle of Founders was called once more. The simple message was displayed in the center of the room. "Is the chair comfortable?" The leaders debated for hours. What was the correct response? An apology? A thank you? A promise? "It is not a question we can answer for them," the Cathar leader said, gesturing to Min and Gina. "It is a question for all of us, but it is first a question for the children of Earth." All eyes turned to the two humans. The weight of the message settled on their shoulders. The entire future of the relationship between humanity and the galaxy seemed to rest on their reply. Min thought about the empty chair. He thought about the sacrifice. He thought about the quiet dignity of his people. He looked at Gina, and he saw the same understanding in her eyes. They knew what they had to say. The answer was not in grand words. It was in the truth of their new existence. They would not beg for their ancestors to return. They would not demand a throne. They would simply report. They would tell their ancestors what they had seen, and what they had become. The reply was sent. A simple message from the human foundlings of the Galactic Federation beamed back towards the silent, watching Earth. The message was sent. There was no immediate reply. The silence from Earth was absolute. Days turned into weeks. Life on the station continued, but for Min, Gina, and the other human foundlings, the waiting was a constant, quiet hum in the background of their lives. They did not know what they expected. An invitation, a ship? More questions? The silence was its own answer. It was a reminder that the people of Earth were not waiting for a perfect reply. They were waiting for a change that had to be real, not just words in a transmission. The human foundlings began to meet regularly. They called themselves the Wardens, a name from the secret Soul Declaration. Their purpose was not to rule or to seek power. Their purpose was to remember and to live in a way that honored that memory. This new purpose changed their actions in small but significant ways. Before, a human engineer named Zhang, working on a new starship engine, might have designed it to be efficient and safe. Now he also considered the ethical impact. Could this engine technology be used for aggression? He worked with the Vril to incorporate safeguards, making it a tool for peace and exploration, not war. Before, a teacher named Sue, who taught galactic history to young aliens, had to teach the official false story. Now she did not reveal the secret, but she began to ask her students different questions. What does true strength look like? She would ask. Is it the power to destroy or the power to protect? What would you sacrifice for the freedom of someone you have never met? She planted seeds not of the truth, but of the values behind the truth. Min, in his work as a liaison, found a new confidence. When there was a dispute between species, he no longer just tried to find a compromise. He gently guided them to think about the bigger picture. He would say, "What solution benefits the whole galaxy, not just your part of it?" He became known as a wise and fair voice, a bridge between worlds. Gina continued her work in astrophysics, but now she focused her research on the Sol system. With the quiet permission of the Circle, she used the Federation's sensors to study the dead Earth. She mapped the frozen continents and the silent seas. It was not an invasion. It was a vigil, a way of watching over the tomb of their ancestors, of keeping them company in their long, lonely watch. The alien delegates noticed the shift. They saw the humans were not seeking revenge for the past. They were not angry. They were building. They were helping. The quiet dignity of the humans began to earn a deep, unspoken respect. One day, a crisis occurred. A small, aggressive species from the edge of the galaxy, the Scar, attacked a Cathar colony. The Scar were fierce warriors. The Cathar fleet was struggling. The Circle of Founders debated what to do. The old instinct was to send a massive fleet, to meet violence with greater violence, to crush the Scar and show the strength of the Federation. In the War Council, the voices were loud and angry. "We must destroy them," one Gax general roared. "Show them we are not weak." Min was present as a liaison. He listened to the anger and the fear. He thought about the empty chair. He thought about the weapon of silence. He thought about his ancestors who had faced a much greater enemy and had refused to become monsters. He stood up. The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to the young human. "The Scar are violent," Min said, his voice calm but firm. "But are they a hive mind? Are they an evil that cannot be reasoned with? Or are they just afraid or hungry? Or misinformed?" The Gax general scoffed. "What does it matter? They are attacking us." "It matters," Min said, "because how we fight defines who we are. My ancestors proved that. They had the power to destroy, and they chose a different path, a harder path. What if we tried that path first?" He proposed a radical plan. Instead of a war fleet, they would send a small, unarmed diplomatic ship protected by a minimal guard. Its mission would not be to threaten, but to ask questions, to find out why the Scar were attacking, to offer help, not punishment. The council was shocked. It was a foolish, dangerous idea. It was suicide. But then the Cathar leader spoke. She had lost many of her people in the attack. Her voice was filled with grief, but also with a new wisdom. "The human is right," she said. "For centuries we have lived a lie about our own past. Perhaps it is time we started living the truth of our salvation. Let us try the human way. Let us try understanding." The mission was approved. It was incredibly dangerous. The diplomatic ship, with a crew of volunteers from many species, including a human warden named Day, flew into the conflict zone. For a tense week, there was no word. The station waited, holding its breath. Many believed the ship had been destroyed. Then a message came. It was from Day. His face appeared on the screen, tired but calm. "We made contact," he said. "The Scar were not conquerors. Their homeworld is dying. Their star is becoming unstable. They attacked the Cathar colony out of desperation, hoping to steal their technology to save their people. They thought we were all like the progenitors, that we would never help them." Day explained that the Federation diplomats, led by the calm presence of the human warden, had not fought back. They had listened, and then they had offered a solution, The Federation would help the Scar stabilize their star. They would share the technology. In return, the Scar would cease their attacks and join the Federation as a peaceful member. The Scar, who had only known the galaxy as a brutal, competitive place, were stunned. They had expected to be destroyed. They were offered a future instead. The war was over. Not with a bang, but with a conversation. It was a victory, but it felt different from any victory the Federation had ever known. It felt clean. It felt right. On the station, the news was met with a profound silence. Then a slow dawning sense of awe. They had faced a threat and they had chosen the path of the humans. The path of sacrifice, of looking beyond the immediate violence to the root cause, and it had worked. That evening, Min and Gina went to the Grand Conclave Hall. It was empty and quiet. The lights were dim. They walked to the Circle of Founders and stood before the empty black stone chair. It was no longer a symbol of a sad mystery or a shameful secret. It was a teacher. It was a guide. Min reached out and gently touched the cold, polished stone of the chair. It was solid and real. "It's not comfortable," Min said softly, answering the question from Earth. "It's hard. It asks difficult things of us. It asks us to be better than we think we can be." Gina nodded, standing beside him. "But it's a good seat. It's the most important seat in the galaxy, and it's right that it stays empty." They understood now. Humanity was not coming back to claim a throne. They had become something else. They were the standard. The empty chair was a constant, silent challenge to every species in the galaxy. Can you be better? Can you be worthy of the peace you were given? The foundlings were no longer orphans. They were the bridge. They were the living reminder of that challenge. They would walk among the stars not as rulers but as examples. They would help the galaxy grow slowly and patiently toward the light of the sacrifice that had been made for them. The chair was vacant, and it would remain vacant. And that was the most powerful and the most hopeful truth of all.